Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rant. Politi, Fonseca, and joining us again, Pat Lanny, fresh off a baby. Apparently discovered that not much for a new father to do other than change diapers and stare at her. What are you doing, Pat? Why are you back so soon? What happened?
Oh, that's it. Changing diapers like Rutgers changes quarterbacks.
Whoa, look at that. You've been sitting there. You've been sitting there.
I had all week.
She's just been storing it up, sitting there, staring at the crib, and that's good. A good line. How is Juliet?
Juliet is doing amazing. We just went to the pediatrician today and had great weight gain. So I think Jay Butler would be proud of that progress in the nursery.
Outstanding. Good for you. All right. So let's talk some Rutgers football. Ohio State, you missed a great trip to Columbus, 49-10 loss. Rutgers actually led in the game. Good news, bad news, I guess. Still not on the same planet with that team. We knew that. Going in. They did a better job against the pass than I thought they would, but then Ohio State's backup running back looks like Archie Griffin. So tell me, Fonseca, you watched it. Is there anything else we have to talk about this, or can we just move on?
I gotta be honest, I didn't watch the whole thing like I usually do. I tapped out for the most part. I mean, Rutgers. We do know that Rutgers could win the first 4 minutes of a game against Ohio State. They just have to figure out how to win the rest of the 56 minutes, which might be a little harder.
The most exciting, obviously, and was at the end when the Jason, the Ryan Day, almost the Jason Day, he plays golf. The Ryan Day fireworks, which was something to watch. It's funny. Of course, that's got all the national attention. Our friends at the Yahoo podcast were talking about it. They both said two coaches protecting their players. And I believe Ryan Day when he says that his punter did that on his own. Kid from Australia probably had no idea that it was against our rules of sportsmanship to fake a punt up 39 points. And I also believe Greg Schiano when he said he was trying to avoid a melee. I'm watching it. I'm not sure I believe both of them when they say they're pals. I just seemed like that was a little awkward. What did you see on TV, Pat, when you were watching this at home? Was there something we missed watching it live?
No, my immediate reaction was a lot of what you guys covered. The announcers were flabbergasted at what was going on. Yeah. Just they kind of glazed over it a lot. But obviously, the cameras picked it up really well. So if you went back, I'm sure Brian did some lip reading in his review. The lip reading, and I don't know what you saw, Brian, but it looked like there were some choice words dropped. I don't know exactly what the choice words were in reference to, but that one lip motion certainly tipped off that perhaps they weren't just exchanging pleasantries there.
Yeah, it was hard to read exactly what they were saying. I saw some people were disappointed. I didn't do the full-on investigation as usual, but they were talking sideways. So you're looking at the sides of their mouths. It's hard to really understand. The Lantern, student media at Ohio State, had a video of the handshake after the game with unbelievably good audio. I don't know how they did it, but you could hear Ryan Day saying, I apologize for that. I'm protecting my players. You're protecting your players. And Greg said something to the effect of, you got it, or whatever. So I believe them when they say that in the post-game press conference. Now, if you'll allow me, Steve, on my thoughts on this sportsmanship thing. One, if Rutgers doesn't want the punter to run 22 yards on fourth down, don't try to block the punt.
Right. That was not smart.
Yeah, I think you kind of reap what you sow there. Aaron Cruikshank, I think you had said this in the press box. He probably hasn't tackled somebody since high school. And maybe he's upset. They're losing by 39 points. He sees a punter, a chance to hit him. He hits him maybe 2 steps out of bounds. Obviously it was a bad hit. He shouldn't have hit him. He got ejected correctly. I can't blame him for hitting him either, frankly.
I mean, he's 160 pounds too. I mean, a lot of crazy things happened.
That was a nice hit for a welterweight, right? Like,
yeah,
it was impressive. That was a little vengeance.
Right. Yeah.
I just think the outrage, you mentioned the Yahoo podcast, they touched on this. The outrage from both sides, from both fan bases trying to outclass each other. Like, oh, it's not classy to run on a fourth down. Oh, it's not classy to hit. Like, who cares? Like, I don't fault either of them for doing it. And frankly, again, I think you said this, the most fun part of the game was that. That was the most exciting part of the game aside from Sean Ryan's touchdown. So I think it added some juice to an otherwise relatively boring game.
Right. And it allowed us to have fun and speculate which one of, if they did come to blows, when Greg Schiano is pointing, number one, when he's pointing with the Paulie Walnuts point, and if you don't know what that means, Google Paulie Walnuts point, of course, from The Sopranos. My first thought was, I wonder if Greg Schiano has a pinky ring in his collection and is somewhere in like a jewelry box. Could he put the pinky ring on to complete that look? Number one. Number two, if it was a fight, I mean, first round TKO for our man Schiano against Ryan Day. I mean, there's just no, I don't care. He's 13 years older. I don't care about any of that. I think that, tell me if you agree.
Have you ever seen Ryan Day play tennis?
Why would I have seen Ryan Day?
This was an ESPN 30 for 30, and it was like an intro to his whole thing, his competitiveness and things like this. And this guy's playing tennis like it was like he was going 10 rounds,
Oh, so you think there's a chance?
I think there's a chance. I mean, listen, Schiano's tough. You got the Paulie Walnuts point down exactly right, pinky ring and all. But Ryan Day, he's a tough guy too. I'm not sure it's a first rounder.
Oof. Break that tie.
So I disagree. Yeah.
I just can't see a guy with Ryan Day's facial hair winning a fight against anybody. I just can't take him seriously when I look like that.
That's tough.
I think Greg would win. I agree with the vast majority. I think Greg's a little bit older, a little bit shorter, but I think the Jersey juice puts him over the top.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm going to go one step further here because this podcast is all about takes that, but I think Greg, I would take him in a fight against most of the Big Ten coaches at this point, and especially now that Paul Chryst is out of Wisconsin. He might have been my number one draft pick. You get rid of him. I mean, Harbaugh, I think Harbaugh would fight dirty. I would be a little concerned about that fight. Loxley, I mean, he seems like a brawler. But otherwise, I don't see a lot of guys that I'm like, who am I missing? You got a name?
Mel Tucker.
Mel Tucker would be tough.
Be a tough one. That'd be a
tough one. He looks like he could kick your ass. Yeah. But forget most.
PJ would just be talking the whole time. He'd be like that yappy little dog.
He'd be last. He'd be last in the draft pick. You put the 14 coaches out there. I mean, I would take Kirk Ferentz in a fight before PJ.
No, you how's that? Come on.
I would. Yes, I would. Yes, I would. I would totally. That guy is mean. You look at him. Come on. He would. Yeah, totally.
I would agree with you in pretty much everything until that point. I think Mike Loxley is like hands down first, the easiest number one pick of all. I would not mess with that guy in any sense. But yeah, I agree with you. I do think Greg is definitely upper half of the Big Ten.
Upper half. All right. I'm glad we covered that. Good ranking. I'll look forward to your slideshow on that next week. All right. Well, I think we should just move on. I don't know. There's a lot to really gain by talking a lot about Ohio State, especially with Nebraska now. Nebraska, Indiana, I think we can all agree that is the season. That's going to tell us what the season's going to be. If Rutgers can beat Nebraska and Indiana, 5 wins, then they have 5 games to win the final game. Either be an underdog in every one of those games. So they'll have a chance at least to keep the fans engaged, to get to a bowl game again, to earn it with earn on the field, not just by academics. Both these teams are beatable, and they played this weekend, so it was interesting. We were watching a little bit of it. I guess Nebraska just are figuring things out at the right time. Is that an accurate statement, Brian? I mean, you think that this, after all the coaching nonsense, perhaps they've kind of got something going?
I mean, they beat Indiana. That's not exactly the world beaters.
Oh yeah, but they lost to Georgia Southern, right? I mean, it's not.
It's fair. And they also had a bye week going into that game. They had some time to Bill Bush, the former Chris Ash assistant at Rutgers, had a full 2 weeks to kind of implement his defense as the new DC there.
A good coach too, by the way. A good coach.
Yes, one of the better Chris Ash coaches. A rare good coach that Chris Ash hired at Rutgers. Yes. And I guess we'll see a real test on Friday. I think this is obviously a must win for Rutgers. I agree with you completely on the fact that they need this win to stay on the path to a bowl game. There are really only 3 winnable games left, in my view. this game, Indiana and Michigan State, which looks like an absolute dumpster fire. So if you lose this game, I don't think 6 wins is reasonable. So a lot riding on this Friday night game.
I guess the one thing that have to continue to concern you, even as bad as Nebraska has been defensively, you just can't count on this Rutgers offense to do much. Evan Simon, 2 more turnovers, and that's obviously we know that this offense does not have that level of you can't make up for mistakes. He made a couple of nice throws, though, I will say that, but we're seeing flashes, but not enough of them. Noah Vedral, he was out there, but he doesn't seem like he can throw the ball, which seems weird. Why would you have him out there if you can't throw the ball? I doubt Gavin Wimsatt's going to be back. I mean, what's a reasonable level of expectation for this offense right now, Pat?
It's floundering. Yeah. It's absolutely floundering. It's amazing if you think back to like the podcast we recorded during training camp and what we would have thought of Evan Simon at that point, and to see where he is now.
Yeah,
as the guy that Rutgers is relying on. I think he's actually progressed decently well compared to training camp. But you're right. It's a floundering offense that looks lifeless. And Nebraska hit some big plays in that Indiana game, and they have some big play potential. And if it gets into one of those games where Nebraska's, hitting quick scores, Rutgers is in big trouble.
Right. I would love to, and I think you're going to see it. I've got no information, but I would love to see Greg Schiano pull a page from Schiano 1.0 and just turn this into Sam Brown's offense. Make him your Ray Rice. I just think that he is a special talent. When you saw the way he was running the ball against Ohio State, and this is something I think you mentioned in your film review, Fonseca, when they pulled him out on 3rd and 4th down late in that game, it's like, what are you doing? I mean, I get it. You want to be creative. You got a lot of guys to use. It's hard to manage a running back room. They all do different things, is the quote you keep on. Here's the one thing this guy does: he gained 5 yards, gained 6 yards. I mean, that I think that if they give him 25 carries in this game, I think Rutgers has a much better chance of winning. Do you disagree?
I don't disagree. I think he's been the best pure running back as far as running between the tackles. He runs hard. He runs physical. He always gets yards after contact. He has had the best season so far of the Rutgers running backs, though obviously not a huge bar to clear. Rutgers running backs have really floundered, to use Pat's word, since that first game against Boston College and Wagner, I guess. Nebraska's defense is not great. Its defensive front is not very good either. So this could be a chance for that offensive line that struggled so much against Iowa, and it was a bit better against Ohio State, to be fair. They can really get back in that mode and kind of push the Nebraska defensive front forward. And again, given what we just said about the quarterback situation, they probably have to, because I don't know if Evan Simon is able to win, a shootout. It's hard for me to picture that happening.
Yeah. And you mentioned that about Simon too. I mean, that's a great point. What you said, Pat, it's just like, it's the idea that we would have been 5 weeks into this and he would be the guy. He'd be the only option. It's just kind of,
it's crazy. Just to add to that, first of all, you are so far ahead on Sam Brown than anyone else. So congratulations on that, Steve.
Once every 3 or 4 years.
You nailed that. Yep. So kudos to you. Is that if you do that Ray Rice offense and you're basically saying we're going to hand the ball off to Sam Brown, 30 times a game, that's fine. I think it's a great idea, but I think it takes away from everything that Sean Gleason was brought in to do and be this innovator and have this spread high octane offense. I'm not saying that what your suggestion is a bad idea. I actually think it's a pretty good idea given where we're at, but
you can still innovate.
Rutgers is cycling backwards.
Yeah, I hear you, but you can still do some of those things. Like I think that the trick play he called earlier in that game when Krushaik takes the pitch and throws the pass to John Elligan, that scores on just about any other team they play. But they're playing Ohio State, and of course the linebackers got whatever lateral speed. That's just NFL, and he gets there in time to just snuff it after a 6-yard gain. I still think there's a way you can be creative and make the passing game, throw in the middle of the field, do some things that they're not doing now, and still make the focal point of it. And then one thing I will say, tell me that I think this offensive line is better at run blocking than pass blocking. At least that's what we've seen.
Fair. I know we got this question coming up, but isn't that exactly what you see on Sundays with the Giants, Steve? They've catered this offense to they finally can get Saquon going again, and
right, they're going to kill Saquon Barkley.
Talk about that later. Yeah,
but I mean, absolutely. Yeah, there's no question. It was like watching Yeah, and when they eventually just didn't have any quarterbacks at all, the Giants, and they still won the game. So hey, that's great news. All right, let's dive into true or false, fellas. And this is great. So I'm on the plane coming back from Columbus, and there's a Rutgers fan. It's a really rocky flight. We're coming in the hurricane winds in Newark, and you always have that moment with the fellow passengers when you land. You're like, oh, that was different. So I look behind me, and there's a Rutgers fan who I talked to in the terminal, and I just say to him, like, how about that bumpy flight? And he goes, yeah, you should mention that as true or false. I'm like, wow, this is a guy who listens to the podcast. So true or false? Was that a bumpiest flight I've been on in a while? True. Anyway, all right.
On our flight back, I was on the flight back with Chris Eisman of the Bergen Record, and I was not awake for this. I slept through the flight, but I was told that we were told by the crew that we were going to undergo extreme turbulence upon arriving near Newark, which, if you ask me, you could just say turbulence. I think telling people you have extreme turbulence probably sends off the alarms in everyone's head. Yeah,
no, there's no question. It gets people, superb.
So a good trip to miss, you're saying.
Yeah, that doesn't take effect, the airport Marriott bar. All right, true or false? Aaron Cruikshank deserved to be suspended for his late hit against Ohio State. Fonseca, true or false?
False.
Pat?
False. Jersey juice, baby.
False. Come on, it was silly. True or false? Gavin Wimsatt will be back for Nebraska. Pat, you go first this time.
False.
Okay. Brian?
He was in a boot on the sideline, barring some 3D chess, voodoo, magic, giant thinking from Greg Schiano. I'm going to say false.
That's why I'm going to say true. I think the boot was meant to get us off the scent here. Why else would you wear a boot out there? He can walk. Excuse my dogs. Of course, they're going crazy. True or false? Penalties is a problem for this team that we're not talking enough about. Fonseca, true or false?
True.
Yeah. Pat?
True.
Another, what was it, 10 for 60 yards? I mean, 8 for
10 for 61.
Yeah, not good. True or false? Sean Ryan is now this team's best wide receiver. Brian, true or false?
True, and I think by a considerable margin.
Yeah. All right. Pat?
True in terms of what a wide receiver is. Cruikshank's still more valuable.
Okay. Interesting. I think Johnny Langan might get a vote too, but I'm going to go with Ryan at this moment. True or false? The MVP of this team is Adam Korsak again. Brian, true or false?
False. I can't get myself to go through this again.
Pat, true or false?
False. Johnny Langan, like you said.
I know it is, but they do not score that first touchdown if not for another perfect. And that's another thing that happened for the Giants. A great punt, gets the returner backpedaling, and he muffs the punt.
Are we going to give Korsak credit for that? Or are we going to blame the Ohio State punt returner for muffing the punt?
I mean, yeah, but he still hit. It was just a great punt. Got caught. I mean, you have to give half and half, right?
I can give half and half.
7 points for a punter. Yeah,
I'm going to give Korsak credit. Come on. True or false? Ohio. I don't know why I put this on there. True or false? The Ohio State band let down America with its tribute to Shrek. Brian, true or false?
I mean, there's no answer but true.
Absolutely true.
Oh, come on.
True.
Sucked. It was beautiful.
True.
It was wonderful. I cry. I shed a tear. They had Shrek costumes. Can you imagine that? A couple more. True or false? Wisconsin fired Paul Chryst too soon. Brian, true or false?
This is tough. I'll say false.
Pat?
True.
Wow. Okay.
True.
I'm going to go true, although this one seemed really fast. I don't know. And finally, John Glenn flew 149 combat missions in World War II and the Korean War, orbited the Earth more than 100 times, served 24 years in the Senate, and is, by any definition, a great American. Well, Pat, why don't you go first? True or false? How would you generally feel about that?
I think if he got to 105 orbits, that maybe would have put him at that level. But I'll say true and kick this over to Brian.
Yeah, what do you think, Brian? True or false?
So we in America crave excellence, correct? We don't go for second place or third place.
Oh, for crying out loud.
We don't. Why are we crediting a guy for going to space when he wasn't the first guy to go to the moon?
Right.
Why are we crediting a guy to go into Senate when he wasn't the president?
Yeah.
You know, what is this? A guy gets a plaque in the airport and all of a sudden he's a great American? I'm going to go false. Yeah, although I will say, when I took that sweet photo with him at the airport, we kissed and made up. We're boys now,
good.
John Glenn.
You're okay? Yeah. The John Glenn family. Yeah. All right. That's great. All right. Do we have to recap any of these? The penalties thing, Greg hasn't talked a lot about it. I mean, what is that? Do we know any? Is there a common thread here with the penalties that we're seeing? Is it just sloppiness?
How about the penalty on the kickoff? That was
What was that?
Was that?
What was that? He just ran up and
Decided not to kick it.
I don't think I ever see. I just assumed the ball blew off the tee, but it didn't.
Correct. It didn't blow off the tee. I also thought the same thing. They got called for offsides, I think, right? I don't know if this was some new fangle trick play that I have no. Maybe the kicker was told to kick it offsides, and then I don't know. It was very confusing. But Greg has mentioned earlier in the season that his common mantra that he doesn't want to be the least penalized team in the country because that shows they're not being aggressive. Obviously, they're being, if that's the metric, they're being the most aggressive team in the country. I do think a lot of it is sloppiness and avoidable. And some of it, the Deion Jennings pass interference against Ohio State, they were like third and goal. You know what I'm talking about?
That was a killer.
Yeah, that was a killer. I don't know if that's probably a 50-50 flag. Maybe they're getting a bit unlucky in those 50-50 calls, but that's not enough to offset, being 17th nationally in most penalties. It's an obvious issue. And probably discipline, sloppiness, a combination of all those.
Yeah, that was the one. And that was the moment the one promising moment, I thought, one of the promising moments in that game was that they had that really good goal line stand. They stopped them a couple of times. Then they get the penalty and they stop them 3 more times. And you're like, oh, this is pretty encouraging. But then, it's Ohio State. They bang it right in on 4th down, and that's the end of that. So
I thought that stand had a very interesting thing in that it showed the starting linebackers, each of them made a big play. Tyron Powell ran like from the center of the field to the sideline, made a great play on CJ Stroud. Deion Jennings made a similar play. And then on the touchdown, you see how the depth at linebacker is killing them because Andrew Vance, who's a walk-on linebacker, gets caught on a block, and then Mayan Williams gets wide open into the end zone, doesn't get touched. So that's kind of the dichotomy there between how good the starting linebackers are and how poor, inexperienced, whatever word you want to use for the depth behind them.
And other things. Wim said, I'm half kidding about it, but it wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me if he's back, just because I didn't think the injury was, all that, didn't look all that serious. I get it, the boot, it's his ankle. They don't want to risk further injury, and certainly they want him available for Indiana. But if they're going to have Noah out there just to run the ball, you might as well have him out there, right? So
here's another. Now that brings up a really good point. Why was Wim sit the week before a game time decision and then didn't dress this week? So we're saying that his injury progressed even further in the second week than the first week, which makes no sense.
That's right. Good point. You're sniffing this out. I think we're on to something here. Hopefully, whoever the coach of Nebraska, Mickey, doesn't listen to our podcast. Anything else? Also, I think it's fascinating that Wisconsin, the picture of stability is, and again, not to be a Dan Wetzel fanboy, but Dan Wetzel had a great column for Yahoo today about this, about how the Big Ten is becoming the SEC and these moves, and it really is. The guy has 3 Big Ten West titles, and the record is 700 winning percentage. It just does speak to the fact that no one's settling for anything close to average these days. 2 bad games and the guy's out. Wow.
Yeah, and it's a trend across college football. It's the 5th Power 5 coach that's fired in 5 weeks. And the buyouts that these guys are getting are insane. And Brian Harson's probably going to join them. The coach at Auburn, he's going to make $15 million a year getting fired. It's just the way it is now. The early signing period has pushed everything back. Guys don't want to fire coaches in December because if you do that, you lose your entire recruiting class essentially. So they want to do that. And with everyone else doing it, you got to keep up. And I do think Wisconsin, partly Jim Leonard, who's replacing him, is seen as like the successor, the next guy. And there's probably some part of it where Wisconsin wants to ensure that they keep him and don't let him get hired by Nebraska, say, or whoever else opens up in the cycle. But yes, I was stunned at that news last night. It was insane that a guy, like you said, 3 Big Ten West titles, the picture of stability in the West, guy has 1 bad year, and admittedly a year the Wisconsin should run away with the Big Ten West, and they just can him right away. So it's crazy where the sport is going.
He went 9-4. Went 9-4 last year. He went 9-4 at Rutgers. Holy cow! The Big Ten, the statues. All right, good job, guys. Let's dive into our insider questions. Thanks for all of your questions. Again, it's getting chippy in there. That's the word I used. I was texting my wife at my daughter's soccer game on Sunday. She, how's the game? I said, it's a little chippy. And she goes, what the hell does that mean? little chippy, getting a little, tense, physical. That's a good word, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah,
It's chippy. Okay,
it's perfect.
Right. Little chippy in the comments. People are kind of not upset, but upset's the right word. They're just a lot of angry questions. All right, frustrated. There's the word I'm looking for. Chippy, frustrated. All right, lots of questions about the quarterbacks, not just the current state of this team, but the overall state, and I think we should address them. Peter from Palm City, Florida. How badly has Schiano mismanaged the quarterback room, putting all of your eggs in one basket? And that player is so fragile that he goes from game time decision to not dressed and wearing a boot. All the while, Greg Schiano says he's progressing. Another one about that. My question is the quarterback room. It's 3 years into Schiano Gleason regime. Shouldn't we hold the coaching staff accountable for the lack of improvement at the quarterback position? I think it's a wonderful point. Who wants to take it first? I mean, what do you think?
So my thought on this is they got the quarterback. They thought they was the quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt, right? In theory, he was on a trajectory to have the opportunity to eventually take the role. You could argue that maybe he should have progressed more in that first year he was here. Those 3 months of the season, he came early. That's why he came early. But again, you can't say that, oh, he's a high school kid. He's too young to be ready, and then turn around and complain he's not ready yet as a true freshman, right? It's not the coaching staff's fault. Actually, maybe it is. You could argue it's their fault that he got hurt. Maybe you shouldn't be running a design run with Gavin Wimsatt on a 3rd and 10 against Temple. Fair enough. But the fact the kid gets hurt, the fact their other starter, Noah Vedral, gets hurt, really dampens the quarterback room. I don't think you can really prepare for that ahead of time. I don't think you can really – what's the solution? Having a 4th scholarship quarterback that could potentially play? That's not realistic in these days. I just think they got bitten by bad injury luck, and that's kind of derailed this entire situation.
But the fact they haven't recruited one.
Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show.
The last cycle to Peter's point, they have put all the eggs in his basket, and we don't know. I guess that's my problem. We don't know if Gavin Wimsatt's the guy yet. We don't know obviously we know he's got the physical tools totally, but we don't know if he can read a defense and make a split-second decision. And I think that's what's holding him back. At least, he's not going to get a lot of reps, many reps as maybe we thought. There's a lot of football left. What do you think, Pat?
I just think that any team that's playing in this physical sport and is down to their 3rd string quarterback is going to find themselves in this situation. I'm not going to blame Schiano and Gleason for failing everybody in this quarterback room. I think it's more a product of what Brian said, the injuries directing what's going on. And that's part one. Part two is we've seen good, bad, and ugly from every single quarterback, right? No matter who it is. So on the flip side, they just haven't had that production from anybody. So that could be the glaring, X mark on their resume.
I will say, and I had a conversation because I don't understand recruiting as well as, of course, Todrick Hunt, who is one of the experts in the nation. So I called up Todrick to talk about it and just asked him what he thought about this question. And he did point out how difficult it is to recruit at that position. I mean, no one wants to sit, no one wants to be behind anybody anymore. So when you bring in a guy like Gavin Wimsatt, a 4-star from Kentucky, and then bring him in a year early, bring him in during his high school, essentially he's still 18. You got to remember that. That does signal to any other good player that you've identified him as your guy. It makes it much harder to recruit at that position, and certainly giving a scholarship to someone who, isn't at that level, or they don't think they can play in the Big Ten, is a waste of a scholarship. I will say this, like, no matter what happens here, and I'm going to write this, I think later in the season when we get a better picture of it, they can't go in the next year without having they have to know who the guy is going in the next year. That means going to the portal and bringing in a proven player, then they have to do that. They can't come into a season guessing at that position again.
Right. Well, the thing is, if Noah Vedral will be gone after this year, right? So,
you think, but he hasn't played 4 games yet. Yes, you would assume he would be, but
I don't think he has another redshirt year. I don't think he has another.
He doesn't.
Year. I don't think so. No, I think he redshirted his first year at UCF. So he's gone after this year. I could be wrong. I'm almost 99% sure he's gone after this year. So you have two quarterbacks, scholarship quarterbacks. You're going to have to, and they're not getting a high school quarterback from the looks of it. So you're going to have to go in the portal. The issue they run into there is if you're going to get a kid out of the portal, he's got to be a starter. You're going to get a kid out of the portal to be a backup. If you get a kid out of the portal to start for you, where does that put Gavin Wimps at? Does that make him want to transfer? Are you going to want, the best quarterback prospect you've gotten in a decade to transfer before he's ever really able to, get a real chance at meeting those expectations? It's a very difficult balance, this quarterback deal. And, also that decision, we're assuming Rutgers will even have the chance of recruiting a kid who is, a Big Ten starting caliber quarterback out of the portal. So there's a lot of question marks there. I think
Kurt Warner's kid you can find somebody.
I'm not convinced Kurt Warner's kid is
somebody though. He's just the only one we've seen live.
And look, Noah Vedral would sound tremendous out of the portal, and then he came here and look, he was not bad.
Yeah,
he's not bad, but he's the guy that everyone wants to improve over. So can you get a player that's better than Noah Vedral out of the portal? That's another question that people assume maybe yes, but we don't know.
Here's another one to answer your question, Steve. Texas has the guy Ewers, right? And then they get Arch Manning. How does that work?
Yeah.
Right. Arch Manning's going to sit behind him.
Yeah.
Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers, whoever sits behind, is going to get a nice little salary to be the backup quarterback.
A big pile of money. That's how that works.
Yes.
Don't get me started on that topic, of course. Oh, you can get me started. We'll get to that in a minute. All right. Some more questions. Big picture. If fans expect an Ohio State level team, we will always be let down. Of course, I always said that Iowa should be the Rutgers model. At least 8 wins a year, occasional Big Ten championship team, New Year's Bowls, etc. Little to no drama off the field. Agree or disagree? Sure, I was one of them. Michigan State. That's a good model. Northwestern. I know it's not a good year this year, but pretty good model. Yeah.
The Iowa model is a little tough because Iowa plays in the Big Ten West, obviously, which is a little easier than the Big Ten East. That'll be eased once they get rid of divisions, maybe by next season, definitely in 2 years from now. But yeah, I think those are fair, models to I think Northwestern might be the best one, a team that every once in a while you have a coach who identifies with the program, that creates a steady model that every once in a while has that one magical division winning year.
All right, diving into some more questions. Is the running back rotation going to look like a Ferris wheel when Aaron Young comes back? He goes on to point out all of the quarterback changing has not been good. Personnel, Nebraska and Michigan was pulling Sam Brown to run Langan and Wildcat, then Monangai twice, Wildcat on 3rd and 4, and 4th and 2 a fireball offense for Sean Gleason. I don't know if I'd go that far. That's a great question. I mean, what are they going to do when they get Aaron Young back? You would have thought before the season started, if Aaron Young came back, it would be Sam Brown, who would be the guy who they redshirt. They're not can't redshirt him now, and certainly the fans would lose their nuts. I mean, what do you think?
I don't even know. Aaron Young, he has that pass catching ability, which I think has been lacking a little bit from this Rutgers backfield. But I don't know. I don't know that he steps in right away and it's his job. I don't think that's true.
I think he'll get a decent amount of reps when he comes back. It depends on if he's ever going to come back. At this point, we're 5 games into the season. He's been dressed for the last 2, but hasn't played. Is he ever going to come back? I don't know. Are they going to? I don't even know if he has a redshirt year. If he does, maybe I don't know. That's but I think that's like way down the list of worries. I don't think the running back position is a major concern here. I think.
Yeah, you're right. It might be the least concerning position on the team. So that's a great point. All right, diving in, here's one from Steve in Berlin. Do you think any wide receiver recruits are being turned off by the passing game? I mean, you can look at it that way, certainly, or the flip side of the coin is ample playing time if you can run a good route and catch a pass. What do you think? Is this going to hurt recruiting the way this offense looks?
It's certainly not a good thing for recruiting.
Yeah.
And it's certainly something that other coaches are going to point out. Like, look at Michigan, you come here, we're throwing the ball all over. Look at Maryland. We're throwing the ball, scoring 30 points a game. I think it definitely hurts.
All right, a couple more. Jeff Steer, Politi, my question popped into my head while reading your column this morning about the Giants. The Rutgers offense and the Giants offense, compare and contrast. I love this. It is totally true. The easy comparison is the Giants don't have a single wide receiver who would play in another NFL team. I think that's become abundantly clear. At least they didn't yesterday. If Richie, what's his name, Pat? Richie Can't even think of his
It
name.
was Richie James.
Richie James. That's right. If he's your best receiver, you're in trouble. Yeah, and they lost both their quarterbacks running a, Saquon Barkley at Wildcat. It is something that what's going on there. Offensive line. Yeah, they have arguably the best tackle in football right now, if you believe the analytics, anchoring the left side of the offensive line, but certainly the right side has been a hot mess. They've got injuries. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of similarities there. And Pat, I think that shows you like how did the Giants win that game with defense and
turnovers,
great kicking game. Yeah.
The little thing,
coaching. They outcoached the Bears yesterday. So there are ways to overcome
pass rush, 5 sacks.
Yep. Absolutely.
If only Rutgers could play the Bears every week.
That's the first email I got, of course, about that column, trying to praise Brian Dable, who, I mean, he's 3-1, first coach Giants to go 3-1 since Tom Coughlin. I mean, he's off to a pretty good start. Again, he played the Bears, tried to get a real team. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, apologize. That's how I reply to my emails. All right, do we got anything else we want to ask? Okay, so Alex and Freehold, to really judge Schiano, I think we have to forget about Schiano 1.0. If Schiano was not here previously, how would you grade him in year 3? I think the fan base is sometimes marred by his past accomplishments. Interesting. All right. So 3rd year, he wins 3 games in the first year after a team did absolutely nothing. I think we would be, as we were, very praiseworthy. 2nd year, I thought we all sort of agreed it was if not a big step, a step in the right direction. Year 3, I don't know. What do you think? I think we're seeing this now. Michigan State fans are losing their whats because how good the team played earlier. Now in year 3, it's taking a step back. I mean, if there was no Schiano 1.0, how would we look at this?
I think if you look record-wise, Rutgers is right where they should be to take another step. They beat all the teams they should. They lost to the teams that you can understand. Understand why they lost to. If they beat Nebraska and Indiana, I really think the season record-wise is again another step. But the issue is, are they making progress in key positions at quarterback? Are they developing the offensive line? Are they creating young talent behind them? The defensive line, things of that nature. And I think that they're successful in some areas, as we've discussed copiously before. At quarterback, there's a lot of questions. So I don't know if there's a positive step there. I do think it is a very fair point that he is anchored and marred, or however you want to say it, by the previous achievements. Everything is compared to that last year. He compared this year to 04-05. Everyone thinks of it that way. Everyone assumes that 24 or 23 or whatever is going to be 2006 all over again. In a way, the ghosts of the past do impact the way we view this program in a negative way.
Yeah. And
don't you think that Schiano deserves some credit for just at least bringing stability back in year 3?
Of course.
Like that. So I think we can't overlook that either. If you take out the first, if Schiano 1.0, at least the second stint, this has structure. Players are held accountable.
Yes,
it's a real program again. I think that can't get lost in the shuffle either.
It's not a steaming embarrassment, and I think that's. And we've already moved on from that observation. I think that's part of why perhaps we're judging him harshly, because we've accepted the fact, okay, he's turned it into a respectable college football program again. He doesn't get enough credit for that. Alex is absolutely right. That's an important part of it. So Rutgers no longer has to be embarrassed by its football, even when you lose to that Ohio State. Well, so did Wisconsin. So, I mean, you don't have to be embarrassed by the football program anymore. That's not the bar he's setting, though. Let's be clear. He doesn't he doesn't want a participation trophy either. So keep that in mind when you're doing that comparison. But it's a great point. All right. Well, here's the final one. Someone wanted to know about our breakfast, Brian. So what was in your 4,000 calorie breakfast, and did it slow you down during the day? So if you don't follow us on Twitter, I certainly understand. We had a little White Castle breakfast. First White Castle meal ever.
Waffle House.
Waffle House. Why I say White Castle? I'm sorry. Waffle House.
Because we passed by that corporate building, looked like White Castle.
That's right. So White Castle's, man, the first Waffle House breakfast. What did you think? I mean, give the audience your review of the Waffle House experience.
Right. Well, I always knew I'd get Waffle House for the first time in my life in SEC country. Well achieved, Columbus, Ohio. It was great. I followed your lead as a Waffle House veteran. The guy who ate at every Waffle House in Augusta, Georgia, knows what he wants. Got the all-star breakfast. The only variation I got was I got my hash brown smothered, which to our loyal listener, Kevin Fine, that was his recommendation. I did it before he said it, but I did do it. I thought it was tremendous. I thought it was a well-balanced breakfast. I don't think it slowed me down. I think it boosted me up. I thought it gave me the energy to get through that slog of a game. And I would 10 out of 10. Well, actually, I think I told you it was 4 stars. The only way it would have been 5 stars if it was 2 a.m. and we were absolutely sloshed, which
making a bad decision. Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
well, but other than that, I thought could not have gone more smoothly my first Waffle House experience. And I'm glad I did it with you.
Yeah, that's just, I'm so honored. I feel like just mentor teaching the young people of journalism, important lessons. Pat, have you ever been to a Waffle House?
Yeah, Panama City Beach, spring break.
There you go.
Bad decision.
There was a bad decision. Okay, that's good to hear. All right, so that's a great question. Thank you for all the questions. Anything else about the road trip? I mean, you had been to the shoe before, and I make this point every time. And I actually, someone, one of the texters was firing back at me when I said, "Look, if you cross this off the bucket list, go to Columbus." And he's like, "Why in the world would I spend how much money it costs to go to Columbus to watch the team get its butt kicked in front of 100,000 other people and be humiliated?" I don't know. I mean, I get that part of it, but it really is. I mean, the band, the shoe, the campus, again, all these places with 100,000 people in the stadium who don't have traffic issues coming out. It's sort of remarkable. What did you think overall, Brian?
This is my second time at the shoe. I agree with you. Maybe Rutgers fans should go watch an Ohio State game that Rutgers is not playing in to get the Ohio State experience without the embarrassment, as that texter put it. The first time I was at Ohio Stadium 6 years ago, I was there with the Targum, and I remember going on the field, and it was my first time in a 100,000 person stadium, and I just feel the energy of people walking in, and you hear the buzz. You're like, this is like legit college football. I felt kind of like it felt like gladiators in the Coliseum. Kind of might be a bit exaggerated, but I just felt this energy that frankly I didn't feel it this Saturday. I was a bit disappointed. Maybe I'm a bit jaded. But I just remember I have that vivid memory in my mind. It's just a tremendous stadium, awesome atmosphere, and I can only imagine it was electric on Saturday. I can only imagine when a big time game is there, Ohio State, Michigan. It's 100,000 people. Like I can only imagine the energy in that place. So definitely recommend people knock off their bucket list, and I'm looking forward to eventually going to the Big House and comparing.
The band, so the band comes out and does the script Ohio. It's a famous, of course, the band formation where they write out Ohio, dot the I. It's a great scene. And we're watching it, and we notice there are like, I don't know, in addition to the 40 French horns they have and 25 tubas, there are like 20 other guys in band uniforms just standing there watching this. And so we had to ask Jimmy Gill, the great Rutgers sports information director, like what's with the extra band? And sure, to his credit, because this is what a good SID does. He got the information, found out that they're just extra. They've just got excess band. They've got more band than you need. So they were just not part of the
backup band members.
Backup band.
Can you imagine?
Dressed for the game, dressed but not participating, as they say. All right, Nebraska prediction. So Pat, you were not on the podcast last week, but we're smart enough. I don't know, smart's the right word, but correct enough to lay the 41.5 points or take the 41.5 points. And you were the only one to get the spread correct last week. So that means we're all back in a deadlock. We're all, what are we all 3-2?
That's right. Yeah.
3-2? Yeah. Okay.
I took the ghost of Keith Sargent approach on Iowa.
Yeah.
And looked foolish.
But you bounced back. You noticed, you thought that 41 points would be too much, that even after faking, and we were watching it as we were watching it in the press box when they faked the punt. I looked at Brian and said, oh, maybe 41 points. Nope, but they did not score in that possession. So Nebraska, what is the current line, Fonseca?
I believe it is Nebraska -3.
It's -3 now. Okay.
Yes, opened as a pick'em. Dropped 3 points in the last 24 minutes.
Wow, what does that tell you?
Wow,
yeah, that's interesting, right? That's kind of interesting. All right, who wants to go first? Tell me what do you got?
You take it first, Fonseca.
All right. This is obviously the biggest game of the season to this point for Rutgers. It's a must win. I said this. It's not a can't lose. It's a must win. Rutgers has to win this game to stay in bowl contention, to keep some life in this season, frankly, because if they lose this game, a lot of the air comes out of the balloon. I have to think that a lot of emphasis will be put on this game. besides a short week, that's the only real issue I see for Rutgers. I see Nebraska riding a little too high after this win over Indiana. You had the AD coming into the locker room, giving the game ball to the interim coach, and everyone's feeling good. I think their trip out east is going to be a rude awakening, I should say. Rutgers, I'll go. Well, Nebraska can't defend anybody, so I'll say Rutgers 38, Nebraska 31.
38. Holy cow. Okay. I like it. Pat, you picked this as an upset. You're no longer an upset.
That's right. That's right.
And the preseason predictions do not matter. So you don't have to back off it. We will not judge you harshly, except we will.
Yeah, this was my preseason upset that Rutgers on this raucous Friday night blackout would rock Nebraska, and it would be the big downfall of Scott Frost. But of course, here we are. So I'm still shook up on the quarterbacks and can't get past that this offense isn't going to score 38 the way it is playing right now. However, I still think there is a way for a Rutgers win, but it's going to have to come defensively. That said, I'm flipping this one, and I'm not going to take the homer pick. Wow. I'm going to say Nebraska 24, Rutgers 17.
Wow. Okay. So I thought
Nebraska win and covers.
That's a big pick. All right, good. Back off his preseason pick. All right, I tend to lean toward you, Pat, and this is I come back to this a lot. I get it. Nebraska dumpster fires everyone. They really do have a lot of talent in that roster. I mean, they really do. And I think we've seen from this Rutgers team right now that offensively and especially it's just still a program that's trying to get to that point. And the quarterback, the turnovers are bothering me. The penalties are concerning me. I guess there's a chance that Rutgers plays a clean game. I guess there's a chance you're right that but it sees like things have stabilized with the Cornhuskers. So I'm going to pick them to win this one. I also, not a low scoring game, but 27-21 game. So barely a cover on the 3 points, but still a cover nonetheless. So we'll see who's right. This one will decide our picks as well, not just the Rutgers season. All right, what else we got? This is Dave White's favorite part of the podcast. I don't want to let him down. Other thoughts? Well, we got a dramatic men's soccer tie in Columbus, right?
That's the one good thing about the strange college soccer format where they literally only play 90 minutes for some strange reason. There's 2 seconds left, and Tommy DeVito not Tommy DeVito. I might be confusing.
Illinois quarterback Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, I'm confusing
with actor Danny DeVito.
Thomas DeVizio, I believe his name is. And I'm gonna have to delete this part of the podcast.
No, you're not. You can't. You got the kid's name wrong.
I'll look the kid's name up after and put it in the description of the pod. But he scores the equalizer with 2 seconds left. Everyone goes nuts, which is my favorite part of soccer when people love a last second tie. And Rutgers, I think they remain unbeaten in the last 6 or something to that effect. So we did not make the trip to that game, Steve.
I did not know that was the thing until afterward.
Oh, we're feigning ignorance. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I would have. It was kind of chill. I would probably just gotten dinner anyway. But yeah, okay.
You want a $4 hot dog from the Ohio State soccer stadium stands at halftime?
That's tough. Yeah, that's
nothing else that I can think of Olympics wise. I'm gonna drag it out a little bit for Dave, but I think Purdue volleyball. Rutgers played them, lost, got swept, but they hung tough in all 3 sets. That's all I got for you.
Oh wow! How about
golf? Men's golf. Xavier. He won a tournament. He's the first Rutgers men's golfer to win a tournament since Chris Goddard, who since transferred to Oklahoma is now on the PGA Tour. So do we have another former Scarlet Knight headed to the PGA Tour? I don't know, but he won a tournament last week. So
nice. And this is an opportunity to talk basketball recruiting or basketball. We got media day coming up. Basketball starting.
Yes, we have hoops. Big Ten Media Day is next week. Rutgers Media Day is next Friday. Yeah. Lots of exciting things happening. Rutgers practice started last week. I have not had a chance to check out practice. I've been busy covering the Rutgers football team, but we will see all of that soon.
Antonio Chol, is that how you pronounce it? Chol.
Antonio Chol, the last second edition.
Yeah, it'd be like that's the name that's buzzing. So I hope we can get like they have Skol at Vikings games. We could have Chol.
Yes, that would be great. My Jude McAdamney chant, the Hey Jude chant, never really picked up. So I don't really trust the Rutgers fan base to come up with clever jingles, but there is always hope. Antonio Chol was Jerry Carino of the Asbury Park Press was at practice on Friday. Was very impressed with Antonio Chol. I trust Carino's judgment, of course. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself, and I guess we'll see where we go from here. But we're almost a month away from the season starting, so exciting times for the Squeaky Sneakers.
All right, good stuff, gentlemen. Welcome back, Pat. Well, thanks for everyone for listening. Congratulations to James Cratch, married over the week. We want to make sure we did not forget to give a shout out to him. Thanks to Devco, to Keith Norton for the introduction. And that's all we got. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politi here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.